What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 1 of the Cody Cottle Show. And we actually have our first guest here on the show. If you guys listen to episode 0, then you guys know what the show's about. You know who I am. But I'm really pumped because this is something that I've had on my heart for so long. And just God gave me a vision of what this show would be, the people that I would bring on, and the impact that we'd make in your lives today. And I couldn't think of a better person to bring on for episode 1. And I have about a laundry list of about 200 names, but this specific individual was the one that I knew would set the tone for the entire show, so no pressure over there. But this individual is somebody that is not only an incredible friend of mine that I have the honor of doing life with, someone that speaks into my life. You know, guys, the people that you surround yourself with are so important, right? And this is one of those individuals in my life that speaks into my life. But beyond that, his credentials go on, but I'm going to speak from the heart today. I'm not reading off a script for you guys. I'm going to tell you that this is a man that is the COO of an 8-figure digital marketing company, one of the biggest and fastest growing digital marketing companies, educating people all around the world, and he runs the entire company. He lives here in San Diego, but he's somebody that's not only scaled a company and done incredible things, but he's also somebody that values what matters most in life. He values people. He values his family. He's a stoic. He has wisdom in the way that he just speaks into people's lives. I remember seeing him speak on stage a few months ago in Arizona, just rocking me to my core. This individual is George Apecechea. Welcome to the Cody Cottle Show, George.
What's up, Cody? Thanks for having me, man. Honored to be here and thankful to share this time with you.
Man, we're honored to have you on the show today. And as you know, I told you beforehand, there's no special formatting to these guys. We're going to go deep. The reason George is on this show is because I handpicked him to be on the show. Because I've had conversations with him, and there's wisdom that we have spoke about and that we have shared that we know you need to hear. So my job today, George, is to pull the gold out of you so the listener and the viewer can hear that and we can impact and change their life. Is that cool with you?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's get to it, man. Well, I'm going to start right away with an icebreaker, and I'm going to ask you, what do you value most in life?
Great question. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. That sums it up.
Come on.
To put God first, to know that God is absolutely first, and that beyond that, we also have to be on this world, and we also have to communicate, live with, contend with, and collaborate with human beings. So we have to love the neighbor as ourselves. Love the Lord your God, love the neighbor as yourself. I've been meditating on that, and that's really, really the highest value that I have in my life. Everything else flows from that.
I love that. And I love that you went there right away, guys, because that's the tone of the show. You know, George, you used to say something all the time on your social media content that I loved, and you would say, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Right? And you're so rooted. You're on such a firm foundation with your theology and your relationship with God that you see it flourish in all areas of your life. And we could sum that down to love God and love people, right? And I think that's so important, and that's a cornerstone. So now that you've kind of told us what you value most in life, loving God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul, loving your neighbor as yourself, tell us about yourself. Who are you? How did you get to being the COO of a company that does 8 figures in a year, which is, guys, I don't know if you know this, but most companies don't even succeed. Like 80% of them fail, let alone in a space that's getting so busy, an 8-figure online company. How did you get to there? And go deep, man. Take us through the story, because I know your journey. Take us from the beginning and the adversity and what you faced and how you got to where you're at now. Because I think it's so easy to see you sitting here in the podcast studio. Oh, that's amazing. He must be lucky. He must be special. But what they don't know is the journey that you went through to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that don't know me or our company, it's Douglas James Marketing. And it's really just a 9-year journey that my brother-in-law, Douglas James, founded a digital marketing agency, not too dissimilar from the common digital marketing agency, but he found that in the Navy, he was a corpsman for 10 years in the Navy. He found that he influenced people just by following his mission and trying to serve people and build a digital marketing agency.
Wow.
So he influenced his shipmates and people in the military to want to learn what he did for himself. I mean, he scaled up past 30 to 40K per month, like in 6 months, just from scratch, bootstrapping, didn't know anything, just going in by himself.
Yeah, 30 to 40K a month in just 6 months.
Yeah.
Bootstrapping from the ground up, figuring it out.
That's right.
Wow.
And the thing I value about him is that he didn't give up. Imagine if he would have given up even after 6 months to a year and said, hey, I'm making 5 figures per month and it's totally fine. And I can just sail off into the sunset and be, comfortable.
Yeah.
So fast forward 9 years. Well, he listened to people that were wanting to learn what he knew and that were wanting a change for themselves. And that's whenever he realized this really important message that I've learned from him, probably the best piece of wisdom. And it's actually from Zig Ziglar. And it's, if you help somebody get what they want, then you have everything that you want for yourself. And that's exactly what he did. He listened to the people that were asking him for a program, education, coaching, all of that. And he built it. And he built it and he served his community, the military community at first. And then it branched off into just so many other people around the world.
Wow. So that's how Doug built his company, right? And now you're the COO in that company. And we're going to get Doug on the show, guys. We're going to dive deeper into that story. What I want to know is how George Apecechea, that lived in Texas, that had a completely different dream than what you're living today at one time in your life, ended up in those shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up in Dallas, Texas, I was just first generation Mexican-American, youngest of 4. I have 2 sisters and a brother, and really just humble beginnings. Lower middle class, didn't have a whole lot growing up, but had an education and had tons of love from my parents, who were a little bit older than the normal parents pairing. My dad's in his mid-80s. My mom is like 6 or 7 years younger than him. So it's like having parents and grandparents wrapped up in one. And the significance of that is that there was so much wisdom that was given to me even at a young age, especially being the youngest of that kind of a family.
Yeah.
Traditional values, you come to the table at dinner, you share with each other, you value each other. Growing up, I didn't hardly ever fought with my siblings. It was not allowed to even yell or curse or anything at your siblings growing up. Growing up, I felt that was normal and that everybody was like that. And then as I got into the world, I realized that it wasn't so. And sadly, it's not so, and it should be, I think. So I really value that piece of my upbringing. It really grounded me into being a person of empathy, a person who respects people, and a person who just, values the core foundation and important things that in life, which are family, people, and respecting people.
And would you say you show up and you're somebody in my life that I definitely see, even in the Word of God, it tells us to honor our mother and our father. And I would say you do that better than most people that I know. Would you attribute that to that upbringing?
Yeah, 100%. I'd be a completely different person if it wasn't for my parents.
Wow. What would you say to the individual that didn't have that? I'm just going to interject here and there as we go through your story. Like, to the person listening to this, they're like, man, that's amazing, George, but I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have that role model. What would you say to that individual?
You have a choice. And you have a mission. My father, he grew up in a situation in Oaxaca, Mexico, where his dad, this is probably the first time I ever say this publicly, but his dad was an alcoholic. His dad was a person who didn't serve his family, didn't serve, his wife. And basically he was a person who had a really good job, an engineering job over in Mexico. But the money that he got, he would spend on his friends and hosting them and buying, alcohol and things for them. There's a story my dad would say that my grandpa would host, events for his buddies from town because, he was semi-well-to-do and he had some influence. And he would just try to wow them, and he would have my grandma cook and spend all his resources on his friends and neglect the family altogether.
Wow.
So because my grandpa wasn't taking care of the family, my dad, behind the scenes, had to go and take on a couple of jobs, 3 jobs. He sold eggs and milk and bread on a bike. He would go out, take a machete at 13, 14 years old and clear the land by hand and do odd jobs to support the family.
Wow.
On the surface, it seemed that, things were good, but behind the scenes, because of my grandpa's poor choices, we were bleeding out money, and my dad picked up the slack.
Wow.
So going back to your question, it's a choice, and you have a mission, because my dad could have been mad at the world and had every excuse to say, my dad was this way, and so I'm going to be this way too.
Yeah.
But he decided to take the responsibility to take care of the family. And one of the things I really respect my father for is that he never spoke up or talked back to his dad. He respected and honored him even in his downfall and his folly. So at the end of my grandpa's life, he was on his deathbed, basically, and my dad always honored and respected him even in his choices. And early on, my grandpa was so far gone that he would tell my dad, oh, I see the way you look at me, and you think I'm a bad person, but wait till you grow up. You're going to be the exact same way. And my father took those words to heart, and he vowed not to be like his father.
Wow.
And of course, after that, he became a man of character, a man of God. He opened up the Bible, self-educated, brought my family over to the United States, my mom and my 2 older sisters at a certain point, built a whole life, got a house in the U.S., like absolutely did great for himself considering where he came from. And so I honor my father because he made that choice when everything was against him and he had every excuse to just like throw in the towel and just not do anything special and not be a good person.
Wow.
He decided to be a good person. And that's the only reason I'm here. And that's the only reason I am the man that I am.
Yeah, because that choice that your dad made, that I'm not going to be like my dad. But what I think is really interesting is Stefan Arnio wrote a book called Hard Times Create Strong Men. Yeah. And simplify the philosophy is hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And we see this happen a lot, especially with men. But when I look at you, your dad had hard times, and he became a strong man, and he created good times for your family. Mm-hmm. But you're not becoming a weak man.
Try my best.
Very unique. Oftentimes, the son in your position does become weak, but you're different. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a mixture of the example my dad always gave me. My dad never really talked to me and scolded me and lectured me growing up. He didn't have to. He would only give me a look. And I would see his example, waking up at 5 a.m., going to the same job for 28 years, providing for the family, being that pillar, emotionally supporting my mom, because she had 4 mouths to feed. She was at home. She was a homemaker. So the example of my father was what I always carried. And there was a kind of like a pivotal moment in my life early in my teenage years where I saw the big figure that my dad was and all that he had accomplished and who he was as a man and his character and integrity. And early in my life, I cowered because I knew I was in his shadow in that way. And I didn't want to fully step into being that kind of man because I never thought I could measure up.
Wow. Did you feel a lot of pressure from that?
A lot of pressure.
Okay. So you feel all this pressure as a young man. You grow up, you know the story, you know what your dad went through, you respect him so much, and you feel like you're living in his shadow. Mm-hmm. This is a really cool spot to like talk about because you're no longer in dad's shadow. And he's so proud of you where you're at now. How did you go from that pressure that you felt in the family of having to be like the golden boy and like do everything great, but feeling like you couldn't live up to that, to fast forward to where you're at today, Douglas James Company, COO, 8-figure company, crushing in every single area of your life?
Yeah. I mean, the short answer is I opened the door for God and allowed him in.
Come on.
He was outside of the door trying to knock and get in, but I had so much clutter behind the door, you couldn't push it forward.
Wow.
And when I did that, I was probably like 13 years old. And that's when God came into my life. And it's important. I want to say this because that's my reality of what happened. I had all these thoughts in my mind about my dad. There were other things going on in my life as well. So you may know this, but I was pretty severely bullied and attacked during 12 years old, 13-year-old range, because I was an easy target because I came from a loving family and I was a good person. I didn't set boundaries for myself and I was just a kid.
Right.
So I got bullied and attacked and jumped and all that kind of stuff, almost all at one time. And I won't go deep into that story, but ultimately, I was so self-reliant at that time in my life, even though I was so young. I was trying to figure everything out for myself, and nothing was working. And I was getting near to depression and anxiety and all that kind of stuff. That was the lowest point in my life. But that's exactly whenever God came into my life, because I just remember praying with my whole heart for the very first time on my knees by my bedside, and exhausting all options at that time because I felt so depressed and anxious and scared and all that. I said, God, I heard a lot about you. If you're real, help me now. I don't have any other options in my young mind. So I'm going to pray with you, or pray to you with my whole heart. And I prayed. It's so funny, man, because I thought I prayed, for like 30 minutes or something. I was like, I'm going to pray for 30 minutes. And I'm going to give this a college try for the very first time and see what this is all about. Dude, time just passed by so fast. I fell asleep on the ground by my bed in a little ball. I had been praying the whole night until I fell asleep.
Wow.
I was in that deep of a meditative state.
Wow.
When I woke up, I can't explain to you, man.
You're a different man.
The lightness and the clarity and the peace and the happiness that I felt. And it was so weird because I was praying all night, woke up, sun shining through the blinds, and I felt relief. I felt peace. I felt like all the problems from the day before had gone away. And I just remember thinking, wow, is this real? Am I really feeling this peace after so long of being miserable?
Yeah.
And also thinking, will this go away? And it didn't go away for days and days and days. And I'm like, okay, now, how do I get more of it? And how do I ever give thanks for this? And that's kind of like the genesis of my path after that point. Started opening the Bible, going to church, being in the choir. All my teenage years were youth group, choirs, retreats, things like that.
Wow. It reminds me of my favorite scripture, Matthew 6:33, right? Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. And guys, it's kind of crazy. Me and George are both faith-based, but never set out to make this a fully faith show, but it's like the Spirit of God shows up. And I told George before this, we prayed. I was like, this conversation's going to go wherever it goes. So I love that, man. I love how raw you are. I love that you speak from the heart. I love hearing your Genesis story. So tell us what happens after Genesis. What did you want to be as a young man? With all of that pressure, you have this kairos moment through the night praying to God. You wake up, you feel lightness. Something changed in you. What happened after that?
Yeah, I mean, I went all in with that because that was my new identity, and I was at church constantly all the time. I think it's funny, like I was at church, the local church, with like the older ladies that were out there praying all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And the nuns. And
they're
all
the
that
best.
kind of stuff.
And they got all the candy, too.
That's right. And I was always that young kid there. Nobody knew why I was there. It's like, what? Why are you here? And they didn't know my story, but I felt so strongly in my heart to follow God and to give thanks for the peace that I felt. So one of the first things I ever wanted to be was actually a clergy member or a priest or in the church somehow.
Wow.
And that's the first thing that I thought in my young life. I'm like, I didn't know how the real world worked or what was in store for me, but I just thought that seemed like a good path. And so that was one thing I considered. But then as I grew up older and I started to get more of an identity, I started to get into sports in a big way. Since I got bullied so heavily, I wanted to be in a position where I could defend myself and also just be athletic.
Yeah.
So
that fueled you to be more athletic and to be excellent, not average.
Exactly, 100%. So two sports came up, soccer and then boxing as well. Boxing because my dad loves boxing. he would always watch it on Friday nights. I would always sit next to him on Friday nights when he would come home from work and watch boxing, because I didn't care about boxing, but I cared about spending time with him.
Yeah.
And then he started to notice that I was taking a liking to boxing, and then he'd start to swat me and flick me on my head. So I'd like move my head and put my hands up in defense. And he's like, "Oh, now you're learning." And so he started to teach me a little bit about boxing.
Wow.
And for the longest time I did boxing. I boxed amateur back in Dallas in the amateur ranks, and I did it to kind of please my dad. But then I fell in love with it through a sport and a discipline, and all the lessons that it gives you for life. So soccer and boxing were my two things. So then I wanted to be either a soccer player or a boxer growing up.
Right. So every kid's dream. I'm going pro.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those were the three main things. In the church, a soccer player or a boxer is what I wanted to be growing up, pretty much.
But you didn't end up any of them.
No.
So tell us how did that happen?
Yeah. So, man, I spent a lot of time working on those two sports and thinking I could be something. Ultimately, I didn't have the resources. My parents were good parents, but safety first parents. So they never wanted me to go through that route. They wanted me to get an education, get a job, do the whole standard thing that my siblings had also done, because I have two older sisters and an older brother. They all went to college. They all got jobs. That was the paved path.
Right.
So that's
go to school, get good grades, get a job, like work 40 years, retire.
Yeah. So the expectation for me was to do that, but also to do it with more excellence, because I was the youngest and I could learn from everyone. So there was that expectation set on me.
Yeah, not only are you going to do this, you're going to do it better than your siblings, because you've gotten to watch them model it for you, and now you can do it better.
100%, yeah.
A lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure, yeah. So in that time, slowly the sports dreams kind of faded away, because I had to get into the workforce and pay bills and things like that. So in high school, I got into music also in a big way. Got a lot of hobbies, a lot of talents and all that kind of thing. I got into music, playing the drums in the drum line through middle school, through high school as well, and a little in the college ranks as well. And I DJ'd that whole entire time. Me and my brother had our first little business. It was a DJ business where we would DJ for, executive events and family parties and weddings and that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
We did that. Music was a big thing for me after a while. So that's kind of my first career was I got an opportunity through my director at a high school to teach the drum line and the percussion section at my high school. Whenever I graduated and got into college, he called me up and he asked me to do that. And I did that for like 4 to 5 years. That was my first career. I thought I was going to take that all the way until I was
teaching music for the rest of your life.
Old and gray, but yeah, it didn't happen.
Yeah. What happened after that?
Yeah, so I was set on being a music director, but unfortunately, I'll just tell it how it is, but at the high school where I was teaching, one of the directors that was there with me had an underage relationship with a 17-year-old. That was a huge scandal, and it affected all of us in the director unit. So I had to find alternatives for work, because that kind of messed things up for me, just being associated.
Yeah.
People thought that I knew about it and was covering it up, which is not the case. So I had to kind of I took advice from my head director, my mentor. He told me, hey, you can't be in this industry for at least a little while till the dust settles here, because people are going to associate you with that situation. So that got me into working at universities. I got into working for international advising, helping students with their visas. And I was doing that, and I thought that was going to be my career.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I did that for about 5 years.
How old were you then?
During that time when I went to the colleges, I was probably in my early mid-20s, something like that, like early to mid-20s. So, yeah. So right around that time, I was at the colleges. So I really thought that was going to be my career, just helping college students out with admin stuff and visas and things like that.
So how'd you go? Like, it's crazy, and you're going through this, chasing these passions and these hobbies, right? Like, I'm gonna go pro in soccer or boxing. That doesn't work out. Hey, I'm good at music. I love this. I get offered this job. Hey, this is the rest of my life. rejection, right? I believe that God gives us rejection for redirection. And for the audience, listen to that, write that down, take that to mind. When we face rejection in our life, when George thought that he had his whole life figured out in his 20s and he was going to teach music for the rest of his life, boom, something completely outside of his control, a form of rejection, redirects his life, right? So now you're working, at this advisor at this university, but you're no longer there.
Yeah.
Like, so take us through this journey really fast of how you went from that to, would you say, and would you say where you're at in life right now is where you want to be?
Yeah, I'm exactly where I need to be.
Yeah.
100%.
Where you need to be. That was even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly where you need to be right now. So how did you get to where you need to be?
For sure. And I'm glad that the interview is kind of going this way, where I'm really saying some of the backstory, because there's a lot of lessons in there. And hopefully the listening audience can kind of pick up on some of those lessons and kind of maybe live a little vicariously through my experience. I think that we all, as a human race, human society on this planet, kind of have like this parallel experience in some way, shape, or form. Like we all feel the same things, but in different settings and in different ways, right?
Yeah, so, and storytelling is the oldest form of passing on wisdom, right?
Yep.
And a wise man knows he knows nothing. And through the journey of other people, we can learn and we can resonate and we can relate. Your mess is your message. And your message is your superpower. Yep. But what's cool is as you tell this story in my own way, I'm like drawing correlations in my mind to my journey. Yep. And I'm like, man, that's so cool. Or I'm learning from it and saying, how do I learn from that so this doesn't happen to me?
Yeah, 100%, man. So one fine day, I'm working at this college, and then my sister tells me that she met a guy from San Diego, and that guy is Douglas James, who's now my brother-in-law. And so she was telling me that, she wanted to marry him and needed my blessing and all that. So I got to know him. Amazing guy, one of my my mentors now, people that I look up to. And so the thing that impacted me about meeting Douglas is that at the wedding, where it was here in San Diego at Coronado Island, him and my sister got married, and at the wedding he was already in the entrepreneur flow, which was something that was very foreign to me. I was like in the 9-to-5 flow, and he was in the entrepreneur flow. And so at the wedding, he attracted all his entrepreneur, young 20-something, 7-figure earners. They were all groomsmen together with me, and I was exposed to them in terms of being at the bachelor party, which was in
So
Vegas.
you're with the whole groomsmen party, and they're all entrepreneurs crushing in business,
Yes.
and you're still working a 9-to-5.
I was like last in line. Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
how'd you feel?
I felt small. I felt like, wow, I'm not thinking big enough.
I want you guys to really take a moment here as George tells this. Proximity is power.
Yep.
So as George continues to tell this story, it's really amazing how, and I have a similar story in my own way. Once you get into the room or sit at the table, they say get a seat at the table, and you're the least successful person there. It's one of the best things that can ever happen to you. Because once the mind's expanded, it can never go back. You were exposed by being in proximity to men that were doing bigger things than you that made you feel small. But what's really cool, guys, as George tells the rest of this story, is I think in those moments, we have a choice. Our life boils down to our choices. And you could have let that feeling of feeling small cripple you, or you could let it empower you. Mm-hmm. So what happened?
Yeah, so I had to ask some hard questions of myself and where my life was, because I was thinking so small before, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And being exposed to young 7-figure earners really opened up a new world for me in terms of personal development, financial literacy, all the things, for people that are listening and that are familiar with the entrepreneur space, all the positive things that the entrepreneur world will bring, and building businesses and being in the digital space and things like that. So I just remember as soon as I got back from that experience at the wedding and got back to my job and sat at my desk in my cubicle, I was like, I do not want this. I do not want this at all. Like I can be so much better. I can do so much more. I can impact people. Like there's a whole other life out there for me. Because where I was at that time, I had a price tag that was put on me in terms of what I was going to get paid, what my value was, when to come, when to go, all that kind of thing. And I looked at my life. I tried to look into the future if I stayed where I was. And I'm like, what would that look like? And that told me everything I needed to know. about the move that I needed to make. So I did the only sensible thing. I quit my job. I actually went to Italy, to Europe for like a week and a half, with a mission trip, and it was a cool like experience to just kind of let my my thoughts flow and to see what my next move was going to be and to pray. But whenever I came back from that trip and I had already quit my job, I was like, I need to be out there. I was living in Dallas, grew up in Dallas, and all the entrepreneurs were in San Diego. And I said, I need to get out there. I need to be in proximity.
Yeah.
I need to just be there. And my plan was to sell my stuff, quit my job, say my goodbyes to everyone and all my life in Dallas, and go to San Diego without a real big plan. I didn't have a job lined up for me. I didn't have, anything like that. I just had some people that I had met, and I thought, I have some value to give. I'm responsible. Maybe I can get in with one of them and do some admin tasks or, an apprenticeship or something, to show my value and get in some way, shape, or form. Just taking that next step and seeing what would follow and just walking in faith.
Yeah, I want to pause there, because previous to you going to your sister's wedding, meeting Doug, getting exposed to all these young seven-figure, and guys, these are like, I know who these guys are. Like, these are guys making millions of dollars like in their 20s. And George is like in his 20s, goes out here, meets these guys that are like his age. They're like crushing it, running all these online businesses, doing all this crazy stuff. And it's crazy because, George, before you flew out there and met those guys, you were pretty content at your job, right?
Yeah.
Like, you weren't like, I have to quit my job tomorrow and go build this like grand life for myself.
Yeah.
But then you got exposed, and it shifted. And I'm taking a moment to really highlight this, guys, because sometimes you just haven't been exposed.
Yeah.
And if you're somebody that wants more in life or knows you're capable of more in life, but you don't feel that hunger inside of yourself to go after it, maybe you're not in the right room.
Yep.
And sometimes your sister gets married and you end up in the room, and other times you got to spend money and fly out or go to the conference or go to the event or pay for the coach or join the mastermind to get in the room, right? But once you get in the room and you see what people are doing and you go, hey, these guys aren't better than me. Like, I don't know about you, but I got into those rooms and I was young and I saw the young guys crushing it. And I'm like, dude, like, they're not smarter than me. They're not even more talented than me. They just know some things I don't know. And they're willing to actually go for it. And I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So, like, did you feel that, like, dramatic change in yourself?
100%. Yeah. And a key thing about that is that my life before, man, I thought I was doing something. I thought I was good with a little, 9-to-5 job. And my environment solidified that around me in terms of the people around me saw me as on the top, even in Dallas.
You were the most successful in those rooms in their eyes.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. In all my environment. But then with that kind of like ego or whatever you want to call it, that confidence, I step into with these 7-figure earners, and I immediately, my whole foundations were shaken, and my ego was like, oh man, I'm not really on top, am I? I'm at the very bottom, and there's a whole other mountain to climb. So yeah, that was a little bit of a slap in the face, cold ice water over the head, but also really exciting. I was like, wow, there's this whole other level and series of levels that I can go conquer and attain. So yeah, that was the feeling during that time.
Yeah, no, and I love that. And it's almost like, I even think about, like, I grew up in Otsego, Michigan, in this small little town, right? And I grew to become something in that town in other people's eyes. And I'm in rooms with high-level people in my city, and I'm hoping to make some big decisions, and I make pretty good money. I'm like, yeah, this is good. People are patting me on the back. Like, I'm great. And then I flew out to San Diego. It's funny. San Diego, just like you, and I went out and had dinner, and you were at that dinner, and I had that moment of insecurity. I'm like, yo, I'm the least successful person sitting at this table right now. And there was an immediate, like, I'm small and I suck, and I thought I was great and I'm not, but then immediately followed by like the biggest grin, and I'm like, yo, like, I got a seat at the table. And I know by law of averages, these guys are all millionaires, most of them, and inevitably I'm going to become that just by hanging around them. Yeah. So you go through this process, you get back, you're ready to sell everything and move here. What happens next?
Yeah, so there's one thing I wanted to say, actually, in all fairness to entrepreneurs that are actually doing it. you said something earlier that was, man, these people are just like me, and they're not that different, and they're not that spectacular, and all that kind of stuff, which is true, right? The feeling is true. But the reality is that we really have to give honor where honor is due.
Yeah.
For entrepreneurs, you being one now, me being one now, that are actually putting their neck on the line, that are the man in the arena.
Yeah.
You know, those people that are actually doing it, you may say, hey, that person's, not too much smarter than me or more talented than me, but they're actually doing it, which is not nothing. It's something big.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, George, because you know what? It's easy to get in the room and say, hey, you're not spectacular. You're not. But you know what? You're showing up every day.
Yeah.
You're taking risk. You're putting yourself out there. You're taking the blows. You're fighting the fight while I'm sitting on the sidelines dreaming and wishing my life could be better.
Yes.
So that's such a good point. And we've had deep discussions into this and the value of just showing up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like guys, like for your dreams and your passions and the life that you want to live, you got to get in the arena. You don't have to know how to fight. You don't got to be very good in the beginning. You'll get good, but you got to be willing to take the blows, fight the fight, show up to the match every single time, no matter what you're feeling, and that consistency. So you brought this up, so we're going to go there. A long time ago, you gave me a piece of advice in your kitchen. I was contemplating moving out to San Diego, launching this new company. You fast forward today, it's been crazy, dude. Over $500,000 in revenue in the last few years since moving out here. Like some cool stuff's happened. But I sat in your kitchen and you gave me a piece of advice, and it was the one that you tied to the track meet. Can you tell the audience what you told me to the best that you can right now?
Yeah. Okay. So I think what I told you was that I was in middle school and I was probably like 14 years old, and I was playing football at the time. And then my coaches, after the football season, they told me, hey, now you're going to do track. And it wasn't really even a choice. I'm like, okay, now I'm doing track. All right, so now you're running long distance, which was 1.5 miles. It was the long distance competition.
Right.
And so for like a couple months, I trained, quote unquote, for that race. And during that time, it's funny, but I had my first girlfriend or whatever.
Let's go.
She was, I was like, she's all pretty. She was, I really wanted to wow her all the time. Like she was like, it was a priority for me to like look good in front of her, right?
Yeah.
This is important to the story. So then I'm telling her, yeah, babe, I'm in the football team now. I'm going to go to the track team and, my identity, I always do everything with excellence, and I'm always trying to strive for being the best in everything that I do. Excellence is something that my parents instilled in me. So anyway, there I am, 2 months, kind of trained, kind of didn't, got, ready for the race. And at the race, I remember there were probably 8 participants from different schools. We were in our little uniforms for the first time. It was the first, track meet. The stands were full. People that I knew from the town were there. My girlfriend was right there, front center. And boom, the gun goes off. And I just remember taking off from the starting line and thinking to myself, well, I'm going to run this race and pace myself. 3 guys automatically just sprinted like rabbits, just boom, just completely, left everyone in the dust. And then I'm like, okay, that's all right. In my mind, I was thinking, I'm going to catch up. So then I'm going, and more people start passing me up. And so then I'm really trying hard, and then more people are passing me up. And then I look behind my back, and some of those first people that shot off the line were about to lap me. I was like, oh, no. And imagine the embarrassment that I felt. Everyone looking at me in the stands, my girlfriend right there. And then I had to try as hard as I could, everything in me, to finish that race without being last.
Wow.
There was only 2 people that didn't beat me. And those were 2 really husky guys that had no business being there anyway. Man, you talk about humble pie, man. That was a humbling moment. I just remember walking off of that track and going into the stands, and then going to my girlfriend, and even from a distance, the look of disappointment in her face.
Wow.
Crushed me, man. Absolutely devastated me. Like, she didn't have to say anything. I just knew she was disappointed and embarrassed for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you tell me this story,
Yeah.
and then you go on to tell me how in life we are going to eat humble pie. And when we start out to run the race, we're not always going to be as good as we thought we were.
Yes.
And it correlates so much for me, at least, and I'm sure to the audience too. Anytime especially starting a business, it's like, man, I have this grand idea. I'm going to make a lot of money. It's going to be great. I'm going to have all this freedom. You show up to the track meet, kind of trained, kind of not. I read Think and Grow Rich. I paid for a coach. Like, I got this. And then you go out and you run and you're like, wow, like I'm not as fast as I thought I was. Yeah. And I'm kind of embarrassed. Yeah. And I actually lost money. But you told me something really important after that. Can you tell the audience?
Yeah. So I guess the lesson was what I was telling you in my kitchen was, what do you do after that? What do you do after you get hit, right? And so for me, the very next day, man, I was on a track. I was running. Yeah, and I got to learn how to stretch the right way. I learned about nutrition. I started to run almost every day after that and get into my fitness.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I ever competed at the track meet again to just kind of get my vengeance, to redeem myself. But that spilled over into soccer and to boxing. And I created this work ethic that any coach that I ever had was like, wow, how in the world do you have this work ethic on the field or on the track or on treadmill or whatever? I created this eye of the tiger because I knew the feeling of failure. I knew the feeling of embarrassment and loss. So I never wanted to feel that again.
Yeah.
For anybody. And this was a personal thing for me. And so then I started to train, and even in my town, like I was always outside running. I know all the highways and byways and all the streets like the back of my hand because I was running. I started running longer distances. When I was playing soccer, one of my coaches loved me because I would run with my little backpack and my cleats and my water. I would run 8 miles to the training site and then train. And then my coach would give me this big protein shake. I would drink it, and he'd drive me home.
Wow.
And he loved me. He's like, wow, you're like the best. You're like a coach's dream. But he didn't know the backstory, right?
Right.
So anyway, out of that, I emerged as, now I have to conquer this. This thing cannot conquer me. Now I have to conquer it.
Wow. And I love that, guys, because we all have those embarrassing moments in life. Like, I have this really vivid memory. I was a young kid, and I don't know if everybody goes through this, but I went through the season of my life where I felt like I sucked at everything. Like, I remember playing basketball with this kid named Zach Valance at his house, and I was shorter. Like, growing up, I was never the most athletic. I played football for 6 years. I did track. I pole vaulted. Like, I did sports. I wasn't, like, not athletic, but I wasn't good. I wasn't one of the guys that, like, were just crushing it. You know what I mean? And it started to get to me. And I just, like, remember Zach, like, just schooling me in one-on-one basketball on this basketball court, and he leaves, and I start crying. And I'm like, man, like, God, I suck at everything. Like, why am I even here? But something came out of that feeling. I think we all feel that at some point or another. And with your story, George, the next day you were running. Mm-hmm. You're like, yeah, I'm never feeling that again. And I remember at a young age, I said, you know what? I'm not as naturally talented as these guys, but I can work and I can show up. And that's one thing that I can control. So, George, you went on to tell me in that story, I'm going to tell you guys, George told me how, like, hey, when you show up and you're not that fast and you're not that good at running the race, life, business, whatever it is, guys, even your marriage, your relationships, you get to show up to the race again. And the next race you show up and you've practiced and you've put in the reps, and guess what? You're a little bit faster. And you know what? You didn't finish second to last. You finished third to last. And then you show up again. But then on that third race, you notice something, that all the people that were there running, a couple of them didn't show up.
That's right.
They couldn't stay consistent. They couldn't show up to that third race. And next thing you know, because those few people didn't show up and you got a little bit faster and you're putting in the work, whoa, you finished third. Mm-hmm. Then you show up to the race again. And through this process of life and business, George, you have no idea the impact that made on my life. Because there's so many times I felt like giving up in this journey of entrepreneurship. And I would remember this story in your kitchen, and I'd be like, what would George do? And I'd be like, I got to show up to the race. And not only do I got to show up to the race, I got to practice between the race. Yeah. And there's somebody that's going to wake up today, and they're going to throw the towel in. Yeah. They're going to quit. They're going to say, I'm sore. I'm tired. I'm tired of failing. I'm tired of losing. And I'm showing up. I'm like, hey, man, I'll eat humble pie all day.
Right.
Because I'll keep showing up and I'll keep getting better. And eventually I'm going to finish first in that race.
Yes.
And if I don't, I'm finishing top 3 at least.
That's right. Yeah.
So you left me with that lesson. And audience, I hope you got some gold out of that too.
Thanks, man. Yeah. One day everything will be asked of you. Will you be ready?
Yeah, he told me that too. And that still sticks with me, right? Because if you're not ready and that day comes and that door opens and you didn't prepare, then what?
Yeah.
You have regret.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you go through all that, you move out here, and as we wrap up over the next 10, 15 minutes, tell us what happened. You learned this work ethic. You got exposed to guys doing bigger things than you. How did you become one of them?
Yeah. So here's exactly how. This is a really important part of the story for me. I came out here, and whenever I came out here to San Diego, I thought, it's going to be tough, and it's going to take everything from me to actually make this work. It took more than I thought it was going to take.
Always does.
Yeah, it was very hard. So let me tell you how hard it was. I came to San Diego. I didn't have a place to stay. So I had a friend of a friend that had an extra room open because she had gone through a divorce and her man was out. And it was just her and her 10-year-old son. And they had an extra room open. And that's really the only place that I could stay, paying like $800 a month.
Yeah.
Here in San Diego. And I took it. And it was a really big gamble because I've been living with this girl and her son. But I had full discipline. I was about my business. And for the first 3-4 months of me being in San Diego, I had all these hopeful dreams and wishes of networking and getting in with an entrepreneur. And, things are going to be great. Dude, 3 to 4 months, no income, zero whatsoever. I'm at home trying to figure things out.
Wow.
I'm reading books. I'm reading Grant Cardone books. I'm going out. Even after a while, I was going out to interview to find a job to sustain me in my dream. And I was getting turned away from jobs.
Wow.
Because overqualified, can't pay me, whatever the case may be. And so I was like kind of out of options after a little while. It was like month 2, month 3, and I was like, wow, like I need to start making some money because it was very difficult. And living in that situation was also tough because there were different mindsets. My mindset was geared towards my goals and the things that I wanted to accomplish. And in the house, there were other mindsets trying to pull me away. Hey, go have fun. Let's go party. Let's do this and that kind of stuff. Looking at me that like I was weird for just bunkering down and trying to work on myself. And through that, eventually, my brother-in-law started to grow his business. He used to take sales for himself and sell his digital marketing for himself. But he got to the point where he started to bring on some sales people. And you know what that's like, right? At that stage of your business where you're selling for yourself, you're selling your own product or service.
Yeah.
Then you hand off the baton to somebody to sell for you. There's that stage of your business.
Yeah.
And so that's where my brother-in-law was, and he hired on a salesperson or two. And then eventually he was like, you know what, man, let's give you a chance. With 0 sales experience, brand new, didn't know anything, I just had a hard work ethic, and I proved that I could show up and be there in San Diego, and I had the willingness to learn.
You were hungry.
Yeah, and it's a big gamble, and I'm very grateful for my brother-in-law because, I wasn't very good. I had to learn. I had to read directly from the script whenever I was doing sales at the beginning. And even before that, I did a few admin tasks even before becoming a sales rep. But as soon as I got that opportunity, man, the next 2 years, every day, 8-hour, 9-hour days, sales calls.
And let me tell you how serious he is about that. Before I moved to San Diego, I flew out here and stayed with George for a couple weeks, launched a company from his living room, crazy stuff, every day. George waking up early, close his door, in there making sales calls every single day, even with a friend in town visiting him.
Yeah, that's how it was, man. That's how hungry I was. And, well, through that, I became, I kind of rose up in the hierarchy, My brother-in-law, he is my family, but he's also military-minded. Like, there's a whole hierarchy and system of honor and integrity, and I respect him for that. He gave no favoritism. I had to earn my keep just like anyone else. If anything, I had more scrutiny being a family member.
Yeah.
So that's why I worked even harder, because I didn't want to show like, for it to be like there's been any favoritism or anything at all.
Yeah.
I didn't want that. I wanted to earn everything that I got.
Yeah.
So then I was a salesperson. I became a team leader in the sales department. Then I became a sales manager. So I rose up over time, sales leader, sales manager. And then eventually there was opportunity for the business to really grow. And at that time, what ended up happening was there was an opportunity for an operations role, a COO, when we really expanded. And I had shown up, I had to put in the work and the hours. So that's when my opportunity came to be COO of the Douglas James Marketing Company. And now we're launching another company that I'm also going to run operations for. It's called Legacy Stores. It's an e-com brand.
It's first time hearing this. Let's go.
Just dropping it. Yeah, we're selling revenue generating e-com stores that are generating 5-6 figures per month. We're selling those.
Wow.
To people.
Wow. So incredible. You know, you go from this journey of like, let's start with dad real quick. Let's just recap.
Yeah.
Dad has a tough childhood. His dad's not modeling it well. He makes choices to build your family, to be first generation in America from Mexico. Raises you, you're the youngest, tons of pressure on your life, but you respect your dad so much that you want to live up to those expectations. Through that, you get bullied, you get picked on, but you start to develop talents and skills, and you start to develop work ethic. You have a moment where you really realize, hey, if I don't put in work, I'm going to feel embarrassed. And you develop this. Then you get exposed to more in life than what you were exposed to. You get hungry. You sacrifice everything to come to San Diego with no promise, no guarantee. Guys, that's so important. So many of you are still, I sat down with a friend yesterday, and we went and we had dinner together. And because he has the comfort of his job, he's scared to leave it to go for his dream.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to be willing to take the leap with no guarantee to go after what you truly want in this life. But you got to have the work ethic to back it up.
Yes.
And you had that, and you climbed through the ranks, and you proved yourself. And now you run operations for not one, now 2 companies. And I know that anything that you guys put your hand on, you do with excellence, and it grows and scales. I've seen it firsthand. That's incredible, George. What a story.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So we got just a couple minutes left. One of the things I think would be a good nugget for the audience that you guys have done really well, you do things with excellence inside of the Douglas James Company, now your new company. You guys have created a VIP experience in a way that I've never really seen done before. And we're going to have to bring you back on the show. We're going to have to dive deeper into some of this stuff. But tell us how important in business it is to serve with excellence and create that VIP experience through whatever you're doing, that customer experience.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, when you talk about value and, you know, what's important in life, you asked me at the beginning of the show, and I told you kind of what my value statement was, which is directly from the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And that talks about people, you know, love your neighbor as yourself. And so that's really, really important. I think that beyond money, I mean, it's nice to see the bag and the flash and all that kind of thing. And it's so easy to point to that as the most important thing. But
Yeah.
being in this world has taught me through all the high-level mentors that there are way more valuable things than money. And that's a big, big statement or understatement, right? So like people, proximity is the real currency. Proximity to people, service to people, and time spent, like this time that I'm sharing with you now.
Yeah.
That's the true currency, and pouring into people is really important. Because let me give you an example. Let's say you're making a healthy 7 figures, you know, per year, whatever, and you're on an island, and, you know, figuratively, right? You're just you by yourself. You've got all your life the way you want it. All right. Let's just say that you invested into people, invested time, experiences, and those people were like 1% of 1% people, right?
Yeah.
Now you have a relationship with somebody who is a unique champion in their space, somebody who is a heavy hitter, somebody who has influence. So which is more valuable, your $1 million per year, or a phone call to a person, and because you've poured into each other, now you're on a trip in Dubai, on a yacht, in a studio. These are things that money can't buy, and you don't just do them by yourself, but you share them with other people. So it's so important to value people that are in this route and path of excellence. They're so rare.
Yeah.
So that's the true currency, is proximity, is the true currency.
Wow. Yeah, and people. And you guys do that so well. And you guys do that with excellence. And we've watched, your life personally, I've seen grow and scale in so many ways because of the way that you do value the people in your life, the way that you do honor them. And I've seen everything that you put your hand on in business grow as well, because you do value that. And, there's a book called People Over Profits, guys. And I think that's just so amazing. Like, we were put on this earth to do life together. Business is nothing more than relationships. People buy people. They don't buy our products. They don't buy our services. They buy into us and the way that we make them feel, because we are emotional creatures and we're looking for that. And you guys have done such a good job with that. So I guess, George, as we wrap up here, what's next for you?
Yeah, so I kind of told you a little bit about what we're doing with the e-com brand, the legacy stores. And so that's dropping in 2023. We're going to be going all into that venture. And I expect some really amazing things to happen from that. Obviously, we have the Douglas James VIP experience for the marketing brand. We do fly in clients from different parts of the country and give them a VIP experience in a penthouse with catered chefs, and just do it up in a big way. And if you go on my socials, you'll see some of that.
Great segue. How can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, George.apex. George.apex at Instagram, George Apecechea. You'll help me out with the spelling inside of the notes.
We'll throw it on there for you guys.
On Facebook, George Apecechea, Instagram, George.apex. And but that's what's next. I also have my digital agency, Apex Digital. And so what I'm moving towards is to helping people in the solar installation space with digital marketing specifically as a niche, but also helping subject matter experts with paid traffic, digital marketing campaigns, retargeting campaigns, to really help them with building offers and for marketing online through Facebook and Google, to get them more high-paying, high-ticket clients through digital marketing and paid traffic, managing those budgets and being in the media buyer marketing space.
Love that. And one of the hopes that I have out of this show, Guy, is that, nobody will come onto this show, my promise to you, that has not been vetted, that is not excellent in what they do. And my hopes is that you guys reach out, that you connect with George. If you're in the solar space or you're a subject matter expert in your space and you want to get into media buying, you want to start running ads, you want to grow and scale and reach more people, reach out to him, connect with them, tell him that you heard him on the Cody Cottle Show. I love that, George. And I will create one last, space for you. Just any last nugget that you feel on your heart right now that you want to share with the audience.
Yeah, what's in my heart is, for anyone that's listening to this, we know that life's not easy. There's a lot of people out there that are lonely, that are depressed, that are suffering with anxiety, suicidal ideation. I told you about my thoughts at 13. I could have been down and out. So my message is, what's in my heart is, hold on. Just hold on. Whatever you're going through, hold on. It gets better. And not just it gets better. Really, you get better. You get better. So anyone that's listening to this and going through a tough time, whatever that may be, loss of a person, addiction, depression, whatever it may be, hold on. There's something special for you. You have a mission. Hold on. You will come out of it. Trust in God and have faith. Keep going.
Come on. I think that wraps it up right there, guys. Thank you for tuning in to the Cody Cottle Show. Guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You leave a comment below. You give us 5-star reviews. Another thing is, go ahead and comment or send me an email at cody@contentdaily.io on different topics that you would love to hear about on the show, different guests that you'd love to have on it. We're going to continue to bring in the people. I'm going to continue to pour the gold out of them, and we're going to have some fun. And as always, go make today great.